Velkommen til Filmz TV. I denne uge er der biografpremiere på lavbudgetgyseren Monsters, som udelukkende kan opleves i Vester Vov Vov-biografen i København. Filmen følger et par, som forsøger at kæmpe sig igennem et monsterplaget Mexico for at nå frem til sikkerhed i det nordlige USA. Det er den første film af den debuterende engelske instruktør Gareth Edwards, og det er en på alle måder imponerende bedrift. Edwards har skrevet manuskriptet, han har instrueret filmen, han har opereret kameraet og skabt alle filmens visuelle effekter. Alt sammen for blot $500,000 i alt. Vi fik lejlighed til at tale med Edwards om hans film, som allerede har gjort ham til et varmt emne i Hollywood, hvor han nu er ved at gøre sig klar til at lave sit første store projekt, en ny fortolkning af den første Godzilla.
All I want is to get back to America. I'm just asking you to help me out here.
Very difficult journey, very risky, very dangerous. You have the money, you take the risk.
Like everybody, I sat and watched films as a kid and loved them, and especially Star Wars and Spielberg movies and things like that. I always wanted to do it. There was never an option that I was going to do anything other than try and make films. Even when I was a tiny little toddler, if you asked me what I wanted to do, I probably would have said be a film director. I just didn't know how the hell you did it. Like, obviously going to film school seems like the obvious route, and so I was very lucky in that in my local town there was a course in doing video, and so I did a diploma in audio-visual, and I had a great time. It was one of my favourite times of my life into creatively, because every day I'd go into college and pick up a camera and we'd go make a short film, and a few days later we'd go make another, and like every day felt like Christmas sort of thing. And then I went to film school where I met everybody else, where you're supposed to learn how to do these things properly, and I found it very depressing because we made a film once a year. It was a lot of reading and a lot of talking and not much actual filmmaking, which strangely is a very good preparation for the industry, because people talk a lot and a lot of people don't ever make anything. So I was so used to just picking up a camera and go making stuff that I thought, oh my god, maybe filmmaking is not going to be what I want it to be. And when you're naive and innocent about how a industry works, you assume it works a certain way. You assume a filmmaker just picks up a camera and with some friends they go off and they make something, and the reality is so opposite to that, that it actually kills all the creativity. And thank God, I live in an era where computer graphics came along, and it became clear when I was at film school even that that computers were going to change everything, and that possibly we would live in an era at some point where you could pick up a camera and go make a movie with just a few people and it wouldn't look rubbish, that it might look, nearly as good as the films that cost millions. And so I thought it would take a year to get good at all this stuff, and it took me more like a decade. So it was just a very slow process, but I'm glad it took me so long, because I think I matured in myself a bit. And if I'd got an early career directing, I probably would have got all my favourite ideas out by now, and they wouldn't be as good as I could do them today. So, I think in a weird way, things always work out for the best.
But like you say, you worked with visual effects for a long time, but throughout all that, did you always have aspirations that you'd direct someday?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that was the only reason I got into computer graphics. I never wanted to do computer graphics ever, and I always felt like I was an imposter in my mind. In my mind, I was a film director, and I was pretending I could do visual effects so that I could earn some money and bribe my way into doing TV shows, directing television. And I kept waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and say, Gareth, we found out you're not really a visual effects person. You're actually a filmmaker. You're going to have to leave. And no one ever did. And then what was weird is when you announce to everybody, hey guys, I want to go off and make a film now. I've had enough of doing these computer graphics. The reaction is always, but you're a CGI guy. You can't make a film. And it was that realization that everybody views you completely opposite to how you view yourself, and in a weird way it motivates you even more, because you think, okay, well, I've got to go, and no one's going to give you this on a plate. You've got to go and grab it.
I mean, you had a shoestring budget, you had a couple of off-the-shelf cameras, and obviously you had your 2 actors. But then you basically had to use whatever locations you'd run into and just shoot the people who were right there at the spot, right?
Yeah. It was half to do with budget, obviously, but it was also mainly to do with realism. There's something about when you flick through a television when you're at home, you don't have to be an expert, but I pretty much guarantee anybody could sit there and within 5 seconds say, drama, real, real, drama, drama, as they flick through. It's just so easily obvious which is which. And I kind of wanted to blur that line. Like, I just think it's crazy when people are spending so much money making films, and the whole point, in a weird way, is to make it as realistic as possible and believable. That you can recognise so quickly that it's not real. And so I felt like, well, I want to shoot it like a cinematic film, but I want it to throw you. Like, is that a real guy? Is this a real place? You know. And the more we could achieve that, I felt like the better it would be for our story, because when you have something as fantastical as giant monsters walking around in the background, I think the more you can make the foreground believable, the more it helps your CGI and the whole story, really.
I think some of the special effects in Monsters were just mind-numbingly good, especially the monsters. And yet you can make a film like Transformers nearly 200 times with the money that you had. Do you think there's a tendency in Hollywood to over-budget the effects, and thereby producing so much of it that it becomes overkill and unbelievable?
At the moment, I have very little experience of how Hollywood visual effects works, so it's hard to judge why it all becomes so expensive. I can only guess based on reading magazine articles, where in one article the company will talk about how they wrote specific software to calculate how the hair should move in the wind, you know, on a certain character, and then in the next article they'll complain about the industry, they're not getting enough money, the companies are going bankrupt, and you feel like, well, this is why, because look how much effort you're putting into detail that no one ever notices. There's two ways to approach visual effects. Like, you can say to yourself, what's the maximum effort I can put into this? You know, it feels like Avatar kind of did that. Like, what crazy amount of things can we do that sounds like on a list, sounds so insane that when we announce this to the public, they'll think, oh my God, we're going to see something really special here. So let's just keep throwing more and more and more and more things at this, so we can brag, like, you know, win the Guinness World Record for the most effort put into a visual effect. And then there's the other attitude, which is, what's the minimum effort we can do? What is the least thing we can possibly do to get away with this? And what you find is there's only so much your brain can take in, and so the trick is to make sure you put all that effort and all that detail in the areas that your eye is looking at, and in the other areas you can get away with murder.
But while you were shooting, did you have anything resembling a traditional script, or did the story more kind of evolve while you were shooting it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of half regret the way we phrased this when we tell everyone about the film. When we say we didn't have a script, a lot of people interpret it as we didn't have a story, and that somehow, randomly, magically, the story happened as we filmed. And what we definitely had a story. We had all the major moments in the film that, you know, emotionally and physically, that happened to the characters were written down. And it was always the plan to go get them, but I wasn't specific about the details of those moments. So I wouldn't say, oh, it happened in this room with this dialogue, with this, you know, detail in the background, because then we would spend a lot of money trying to recreate that. It was more like, I don't care about the detail. I don't care if it's in a room. I don't care if it's on a bus or in a boat. And I don't care how you say it. But the point is this, and the environment could be any of the following things. Often, you know, we would come across things, especially when in an amazing location like Guatemala and Mexico, you come across things you could never think of, you know. Like, you're just driving along and you'll see the most insane things, or there's stuff in the film, for instance, things like the kids, they hang out washing on barbed wire, and it's like, I'd never have thought of that. That was really the family we met. They really had barbed wire by their house, and they really hung their washing on it. And it's just tiny details like that where most people would go away on on holiday or to a great location. They would look for loads of details, they would write them down, go home, then they would write a script, and then everyone would have to pay millions to recreate all those details. Whereas we just cut out that middle bit. We went on holiday and we took the camera with us. And whenever we saw the details, we just hit record, you know? Yeah. And it was much, much cheaper that way.
I just love to ask about the love story of the piece, because I loved how subtle and how real that felt. Was the romantic element always a priority for you as well?
No, not at all. It wasn't when we began. I suggested probably handful of little ideas that could be the storyline set within a monster world, and the producers got most excited or interested in the idea of a male and female. Like initially they were backpackers, but I felt like, you know, these backpackers would be idiots and you'd stop caring for them if they kept going to where all the trouble was. And so I made one of them a photographer, so that, like a war photographer, so that he would be attracted to the problem all the time and keep wanting to go there, and also then I could associate with it a bit, because I'm not a photographer, but I could relate to someone who had a camera and preferred their career over the more important things in life. That was the kind of love story that I felt I could do. I didn't want to do one that, like, my girlfriend watches a lot of really shit rom-coms, and it's like torture porn to me, sitting watching them. I just hate them. They're so predictable.
Yeah.
Like, and I try and ruin them for her. So during each scene, I just shout out what's going to happen, like, just to try and put her off. And she's like, "I know it's rubbish. I don't care."
Being a huge fan of sound design myself, and with so much of the action happening in the shadows in Monsters, which only makes it much more terrifying, the sound obviously plays a huge role. I mean, how much effort did you put into creating the sound design of the movie?
Sure. I mean, I agree. I think they did an amazing job. It was done in Germany. And in terms of the sound design of the creatures, I left that very much to the designer. All I said was that they're from the deep ocean, so things like whale song, dolphin clicks, echolocation, and that was about it. And he went off and did his own thing, and he did an amazing job.
What is that?
It's amazing what you think you see when you have great sound design, and it was the first time in the whole process when I sat in the Dolby cinema and we were mixing it that I just realised we'd made a film. Like, up until that point, it felt like we'd made this, like, low-budget thing for ourselves, and then suddenly seeing it on a big screen projected as they were mixing all this surround sound, I got excited for the first time, and I kept turning to my producer and saying, "We've made a movie." he kept giggling, like, "Yeah, I told you we were."
I just have to know about this this new Godzilla movie that you've now attached to, and I know, of course, you're keeping your cards close to the chest, and information about the film is sketchy. But is there anything you can tell us about it? Is it a sort of sequel? Is it a reboot? Or where does it take place? Is there anything you can say so far?
He's big. That's kind of it.
Okay.
My problem is I can't.
Okay.
And I want to sort of help everyone and say as much as I can, but the reality is, it's such early stages right now that it's not the right time to talk about it. You see, it's just kind of, without saying too much, it's still, obviously it's still being conceived in a way, but it's all very exciting. I've got a lot of Godzilla stuff myself, and it was like when I got the phone call about it a few months back, I was kind of right in front of me was the Godzilla, the 1954 version, on my DVD shelf. And I just kept looking at it as they were saying all this stuff on the phone, and I couldn't quite believe, it was one of those moments where you sort of have to pinch yourself that you're going to get that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about it. It's exactly the kind of film that I would love to make, so we'll see what happens. I'm also developing a film with Timur Bekmambetov. He's basically, the producer on this other idea I've had, which is a science fiction movie. That's this very epic thing that I've always wanted to do, but I never felt I could before because I didn't have enough money. So yeah, I'm very excited about both of those, and we're developing them, and we'll see what happens, and it'll be much easier to talk about it in the future, but right now it's just a bit tricky.
Cool. Of course, working on Godzilla, it's going to be a movie on a much bigger scale, and of course you'll have to relinquish a lot of the control that you had on Monsters. Is that going to be a bit like handing your child over to someone else's parents?
Yeah, but it's probably more like taking your child to the best university in the world,
But do you dream of doing stuff outside the boundaries of the science fiction genre, though?
Yeah, for sure, I'd love to. I think if an alarm went off and all the doors had locked, and I got locked in the science fiction room, I'd be very happy. But I've got a handful of films in my head that I'd love to do one day, and I'd say that half of them are not science fiction at all. They're just what you might call normal films.
Yeah. Well, Gareth, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and good luck with all your future projects. I can't wait to see Godzilla, and obviously I can't wait to see Gareth Edwards doing the very best rom-com Britain has ever seen sometime in the future.
I tried. I've done it. I tried.
Oh, really?
It didn't work.
Yeah. Okay.
It turned into a monster movie.
Det var alt i denne omgang på Filmz TV. Husk, at du på fredag kan se vores anmeldelser af Monsters og ugens andre nye premierefilm. Og her kan du også se vores reportage fra forpremieren på Super Classico og fra lanceringen af årets Copenhagen Pix-program. På gensyn. Husk, at du let kan finde alle vores Filmz TV-udsendelser på hjemmesiden under Filmz TV-fanebladet. De ligger også i high definition på video.dk, hvor du også kan finde flere udsendelser af Railgun TV, vores web-tv-program om spilverdenen. Du kan også læse flere anmeldelser og artikler på Filmz, som du kan diskutere i vores omfattende forum.